Hey everyone, this is Seth with Voice and Exit, I'm one of the founders. And today we're going to do a follow-up with Dave Asprey, who was one of our seed speakers at the 2014 festival. Now, Dave is a biohacker, technology entrepreneur, and Silicon Valley investor that is dedicated to better understanding high performance and optimal health. If you haven't heard of him, you must be living under a rock somewhere. If you've heard of putting butter in your coffee, that's Dave. He's responsible for that. And he also just released a new book, The Bulletproof Diet: Lose Up to a Pound a Day, Reclaim Energy and Focus, and Upgrade Your Life. Now, Voice and Exit features thinkers and innovators that are contributing to a world of flourishing. Global flourishing begins with community flourishing, and community flourishing begins with individual flourishing. So I'm very excited to have Dave on today to talk about and expand upon some of the key points from his 2014 Seed Talk. So Dave, welcome.
Seth, thanks for having me and for that nice intro.
Yeah, I'm loving that shot glass. Can we get a closer look at that?
All right, check that thing out. It's like, let's see if I can hold it by one horn. It's a handmade shot glass made in Italy, and this is some sort of a goat animal. And the other shot that I'll be doing is a ram. Check that guy out.
Oh man!
Because if you're going to be drinking espresso, I don't know, it's somehow cool to drink it from, horned wild animals.
Yeah, that's like, I guess you'd call that baller bulletproof right there.
There you go. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good
Cool.
coffee deserves good shot glasses. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I've got actually some bulletproof coffee going myself right now, so I'm feeling good as well.
Rock on.
So I wanted to start super broad because I think this would be a really interesting question to get your perspective on. What does human flourishing mean to you? You in the book, it's to upgrade your life. You talk about bulletproof. So, some people have a different way that they phrase, optimal human thriving. We call it human flourishing. But what does human flourishing mean to you?
Well, flourishing is a word that also means like to grow and expand. Something that's flourishing isn't just surviving. It isn't just getting by. Like it's kind of taking over to a certain extent. It's vibrant and it's healthy. So like if you create a vegetable garden, it's growing nicely. That's different than it's flourishing. Like it's happy when it's flourishing. So I think you've chosen a really good word there to describe this idea that it's not enough to just be there. It's not enough just to succeed. If you're succeeding without happiness, and then you're not doing it right. When I look at the optimization things that I do with Bulletproof, I talk about Bulletproof, the state of high performance, but I don't say the state of high performance for running or for being a CEO or anything else, because you can perform at whatever it is you're doing. And you can perform at being a parent. You can perform at being a teacher. You can perform at meditating. And one of the weird things is that I found that one of the performance-enhancing smart drugs increased my ability to meditate. Like, it actually made me a better meditator, which is like, what?
Which smart drug was that?
That was modafinil, actually.
Ah, interesting.
That idea that you should be able to do it, whatever it is you're doing, and you should be able to, but you should be able to do it with ease and with grace and with power. Like, that all goes into flourishing as well. And those are things that are harder to quantify, but when you're doing it right. And creating a biology that's capable of sustaining that kind of work, that's my goal. And not just to do it for myself, but to help other people do it, because you shouldn't have to struggle to achieve these things. Like, they should come when you get everything lined up right, things happen. And it should feel almost effortless. And if you employ effort, it should feel good and fun versus like drudgery.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so basically being empowered to do what you want to do in more effective and graceful ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's interesting. You mentioned modafinil increased your performance at meditation. And that, in a lot of ways, Dave, you kind of get pegged as a optimal health guy, but really when you look at the body of knowledge that you put out there, it's not just optimal health, right? You're talking about some even spirituality gets tied in there. It's mind, body, and spirit. So that's an interesting question is, where do you see kind of the intersection between technology and this kind of hacker approach with spirituality?
One of the reasons that I'm a big fan of the quantified self movement, this idea that we can monitor and look at what's happening in there in the human body, is that I've had my own EEG. This is a brain electrical scanner thing since 1997 in my own home office. So I know that high performance is an altered state. It just is. And that's why it's high performance. If it was average performance, it would not be an altered state. And one of the guys who's done a lot of work on this is Stephen Kotler, the guy who wrote Rise of Superman, and he's co-authored a couple of books with Peter Diamandis. And I've become friends with Stephen and with Peter. And they've put together, particularly Stephen has put together, the Flow Genome Project, where, and I'm a supporter of that project, where they're deconstructing what puts us in a flow state. And that's kind of a fascinating thing. But what does it feel like to be in a flow state? Well, people tend to have spiritual experiences when they're in a flow state. Like they feel connected with the world and they're in an altered state, but they're able to do things that normally you can't do. Some people go into a flow state when they're on stage. I do that. Like when I'm in front of an audience, I go into flow state. I don't know. I am able to pay attention to everything in the room. I'm able to think of what I'm going to say next. I can be mindful of what I'm doing. And it's effortless and it's easy and I know what to say next. And the answers to the questions just flow. And it feels good. And it's the same kind of feeling that you get when you're downhill skiing, if that's your sport. And you're like, if I do this wrong, I'm going to die. So I have to do it right. So I snap up into this new level of performance. Well, all of those have kind of spiritual dimensions to them. So I don't think you can draw a line there, but with quantified self, you can actually quantify some of those spiritual states. Like, oh, there's 5 neurotransmitters involved in this flow state. Or when you're meditating, like what I do, I spent 7 weeks of my life doing a program called 40 Years of Zen that I bring some of my coaching clients through as well. And so for a week at a time, you have electrodes glued to your head most of the time. And you sit in a room with a lie detector that tells you when you're lying to yourself about anything in life. And there's a bunch of other stuff you do too. But the idea there is that at the end of 1 week, you have the same brainwaves as someone who's spent 20 to 40 years in daily Zen practice. In other words, a Zen master. So I'm not a Zen master, but I have the same brainwaves as a Zen master. So is that a spiritual thing or is that a high performance thing? Because the side effect was 12 IQ points. Like whatever it is, I like it. And whether you want to call it spiritual or you want to say, look, I just looked at some, coherence of the brainwaves from front to back and left to right over time. We made equations for those things, and then we measured them, and then we trained the brain through feedback to replicate that state. Was that spiritual or was that technical? I don't know the answer. It's semantic. It works. That's the thing that's precious here. So I look to quantified self to actually prove some of the spiritual things that people kind of sort of sometimes are aware of, but to go, wait, when I feel this way, which no one else knows what you're feeling, only you know that, these things are happening in my body. And we're like, wait a minute, this feeling all of a sudden became something that no one believed because it was ephemeral and personal. And now it becomes something that we can actually understand because, oh, everyone who feels that has a tiny change in electrical voltage across their skin. So therefore, it's a shared experience now, even if we didn't know the same words for it. And this is going to transform meditation and spirituality.
Man, that's fascinating. Yeah, it seems like those, there's this typical breakdown of mind, body, and spirit, and it's just kind of all sort of blending together now, and they're all tying into that fundamental thing of does it feel good? Does it augment your sense of self and connection and meaning? That's awesome. All right, so let's move into your seed talk a little bit. So you talk about the kind of Labrador in our head. In your seed talk, and that this is sort of the automated systems that we have that are maybe a more primitive part of our brain. And you mentioned that there's several ways we can reprogram some of that. So what would be, and you mentioned some of them in the talk, but what would be kind of the top 3 methods you think would be the most effective way to reprogram that Labrador in our head, or reprogram ourselves to go beyond the Labrador in our head?
So in the Bulletproof Diet book, which is available at your local bookseller, I appreciated it. That was an obvious plug. I wrote a chapter about the Labrador in the head. And here's the 3 behaviors, just so people listening to this who didn't hear the other talk, so they'll get this. All of us have this running in our head. So what does a Labrador do? Like it's walking along and something happens. And there's one of two things. Oh, a stick, I'll go chase it. Or, oh, a tiger, I'll go run away. Okay? That's distractibility for us right there. And the next thing it'll do is, oh, look, there's some spoiled animal. Let me eat that, even though I'm going to throw up an hour later. Okay, that's the same thing. You said, I'm not going to eat the bagel, but then you eat the bagel, right? So there's something that happens for you. You know you didn't want to eat it, but you did. And then the final thing a Labrador does is it sees a leg, and, oh, look, I'll go try and I'll hump it, right? Those are the three things that get us in trouble. Eating crap we shouldn't eat, the desire to reproduce and all of the problems that can cause for us when it's inappropriate. And the other thing is we're distracted. We didn't do what we wanted to do, and we don't know why. So if you acknowledge that those behaviors allow your meat to survive, those three things will allow you to grow up enough, even with no human thinking, in order to have sex and reproduce the species. You won't starve, you won't get eaten by a tiger, you'll reproduce, and then you'll have babies. And 10,000 years from now, when there's enough fish oil or something, we could re-emerge as an intelligent species. So we could be basically a bunch of chimpanzees with just those three behaviors. So, cool. What do you do when they misbehave? Well, let's look at, as a hacker, what wrote the program for those? Well, the first 7 years of life is what wrote those. And there's some genetic things as well. But in other words, when your little meat operating system is forming and you're 2 years old and someone drops you, okay, and if you have a fear of heights later that's irrational, here's a cool thing. Fear is always irrational. Like it's a feeling, it's an emotion. It should not be rational. Rational is slow and thinking. Fear is body-based, and it's to keep your meat alive. The problem happens when your meat operating system decides that something is an existential threat that's not actually a threat. And if you're like a typical person, you don't know that there is an API, if you're a programmer, that means something like an application programming interface. There's a way to talk to that part of your nervous system and say, dude, chill out. You're actually not going to die every time you look over the edge of an elevator. Like, it's not the same scenarios when someone almost dropped you. But it doesn't matter if you know that, because your meat operating system is so fast it doesn't listen to you unless you do things to teach it the same way you teach a dog. I like to think of an old Simpsons episode because I'm very intellectual. And in this one, Bart's trying to train his dog. And they actually show the world from what the dog says. And all anyone ever says is wah, 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 wah. Right? Like, what we say doesn't mean anything. But you can still teach a dog even though they don't know your words. And the way you do that is little things like clicker training, where you can click and they get really fast feedback. So what I do with clients and what I recommend on the site, I'm actually a certified coach in this, with the Heart Math Institute. There's a device on bulletproof.com called the Inner Balance Sensor. And another device called Stress Detective. But the Inner Balance Sensor, do you have one in front of you?
I do, right here, actually. I just got it last
Nice.
week, and I just used it before we got on, actually. I love it.
Oh, that's cool. So you know what it feels like, and it's really funny. All it is every time the dog barks, and by the way, you don't know this, but your dog is barking all the time, like probably hundreds of times a day, and you don't even know the feeling, but this will teach you, okay, I'm meditating. When I meditate right, the light turns green. And you hear a nice little chiming sound. And then something makes the dog go, oh, oh, and gets distracted, or it gets fearful, and then the light turns red. But the feeling when it turns red, you can feel it right here in your chest. It is a tangible feeling. And once you've learned this feeling, you have a new instrument, a new alert system you didn't have as a human being before. And you could have got this through years of meditation, but it was unnecessary. So when this happens, you're like, oh, now I know. I'm in a meeting. My boss said something to me, and I got ready to run away or kill him. Maybe I don't want that response. And then the next thing you do is you say, all right, sit. Okay? And the sit command for you and me and all humans is you focus right here on your chest, and there's a thing you do that makes the light turn green. And I could try and explain it in 2 hours of lecture wearing a white robe with flowers and candles, or I could just tell you, make the light turn green. And the light is going to look at the ratio of spacing between this heartbeat and the last heartbeat and this heartbeat. You don't have to know all the science. The bottom line is this has taken what would be a multiple month intense meditation thing and turned it into something that's basically trainable in 10 minutes a day in about 6 weeks. And wow, here's a challenge for you. Now that you've got your thing, I want you to clip it to your ear. You can do this with sound only so it's safe, and go for a drive. And when you can keep the light green, Have you?
I've tried it, not driving yet, but like emailing and stuff, trying to focus on something other than just turning the light green, things that could potentially prompt, sympathetic kind of responses that I've tried to kind of engage with it on, and it's harder than just sitting there and sort of meditating and coming into into yourself.
Try this. Put it on and have a talk about your relationship with a significant other. Okay, if you're both wearing one,
I need to get one of those first.
There you go. Well, to tell someone, hey, I would like us to do this. Like I'm not happy about this, or I like more of this, or I really want you to take your clothes off this way. Whatever it is that you wanted to say that you were afraid to say, and you watch your nervous system go, ah. Okay, that's very useful for you. But when you learn to say it and keep the light green, things happen. Like it's hard to explain, but when you're able to be in that fearless state, because that's what that is. You're taking fear, the sympathetic nervous response, and you're saying it down. And when you do that, then what's left is your parasympathetic response, which is more expansive. Mm-hmm. And people around you pick this up. It's one of the reasons I'm effective on stage, is that I intentionally turn off my sympathetic response, at least most of it, not all the way off, but I turn it way down before I go on stage, so I'm more present. If you're that way in a relationship with someone, or heck, do it before a first date, it gives you the ability to interact with people on a different level. And there's science that shows if you have a high amplitude heart rate variability, that's rhythmic, in other words, the light's green on the hard setting on your iPhone, that other people in the room will tend to entrain to you. Mm-hmm. In other words, your heart, your stress levels affect people around you. And it's a magnetic signal. And this stuff comes from Roland McCready's work. I didn't make all this up. And it sounds actually scarier than crap, and it should. This means it's not enough to sit in a meeting and say, no, everything's okay. Because if you're all pissed off at the guy, his nervous system knows it, and your nervous system knows it, no matter if your behavior is right. So it's your challenge is, how do you own not just the behavior, not just the thought, but the emotion behind all that? And when you line those things up, man, things are different, but you can do it with data now, and that's cool.
That is really cool. And in a lot of ways, the stuff you just mentioned is a lot of times referenced as, oh, that's spirituality. Like, we're interconnected, we're in the same room, and it sounds woo-woo, but now we're seeing you can measure all of that coherence is real, and that's really exciting. And I also like envisioning, going on a first date and like pulling this out. Like, excuse me, before we start, I'm going to hook up my inner balance. Or do you say that to your wife before you engage in one of those conversations? Hang on a sec, honey, I got to measure this. We're going to document this argument.
Once you've done it, I actually did hang out with a couple for a while, really, really cool couple, and they actually do that. They would record themselves on video, and they'd each use heart math. And yeah, they were geeks, but really mindful geeks. And the reason the video was there is, how many times in argument have you heard someone say, I didn't say that? That's not what I said? Uh-huh. Well, when there's a video camera running, you stop saying that. Because that whole response of that's not what I said, that's your ego getting in the way and editing what you just said so that you could be right. But when there's a video camera, the ego won't do that. So all of a sudden, that whole part of the conversation just goes away. And then one of them will say something, it'll turn red. And they'll be like, well, let me say that again in a green state. And it's the oddest thing to watch. But they have a pretty happy relationship, and they work through really hard stuff using this hacking thing. So I'm not recommending this for everyone. Most people just talk and have a hug and do whatever. But as an example of what happens when you take ownership of those allegedly unconscious and uncontrollable nervous system impulses, you can own that stuff. And when you do, you own your biology. And that's what the whole biohacking thing that I do on Bulletproof, that's what it's about. It's like owning your biology.
Yeah, I like that. And it, what came to mind right there is Stephen Covey's seek first to understand and then to be understood. And one of the sort of negotiation principles he puts out there is if you're having a disagreement, one person expresses their point of view, and the other person doesn't talk until they've reflected that point of view back to the first person, to the first person's satisfaction. So what you could do in this scenario is get in a state of coherence before you express back to me what it is that it's an interesting new negotiation tactic. I like that.
It's true. And people don't know this, but if I'm feeling out of coherence, that state when the light turns green, especially if I'm in a situation where there's a negotiation or something, this isn't a manipulative thing at all. It's actually a self-control thing. But I will put myself in a state of coherence, and then people pick up. They're like, oh, actually, like I feel calm. They're like, Dave feels calm, therefore I feel calm. And when we're both less sympathetic, less like those dogs trying to chase sticks or run away from tigers, then we're both able to more focus on the problem at hand and coming to resolution. So it's just a way of being more present. And when you're more present, you're better able to make things happen, make good things happen. And so I talk about this stuff, and some of it sounds airy-fairy, but I'm like, dude, I have the data. And not only do I have the data, I have perception. Like I can see, I can feel that it works, and I have data that shows that it works. Therefore, I don't really care if you believe me or not. Then you do what works for you, and let's compare. And I don't know, right now, I'm running at a level I've never run before, and I feel great, and I'm helping hundreds of thousands of people, and working on sharing knowledge and learning new things from other experts in the field. And I wouldn't have the energy and the ability to do these things if I hadn't have taken control of this, because I used to weigh 300 pounds, because I used to have brain fog that was a problem. And frankly, I used to have massive road rage, and like I wasn't that happy of a guy. And this can be controlled. And it means you control what's around you in your environment, because that talks to this. You control what's going on up in your head, because it controls what's happening in your body. And you control what's going on in your heart, because it controls what's going on in your head and your body. And then all of a sudden you're like, damn, life just got a lot easier. And now I can do big things, and I can do them without struggle. And man, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay, so to bring that all together, for the average Joe who that sounds really good to, and willpower, increasing willpower, being more present, having more capability to control your life, what are those kind of 3 first hacks that you would recommend?
Number 1, if your biology isn't working right, it's going to be very hard for you to get energy in your brain. So I could just short circuit it and say eat the Bulletproof diet, but then it sounds like I'm plugging it. So I'll give you something that's even shorter. If you had a food craving, it's your fault. If you have food cravings, something in your diet, probably the meal before, maybe the night before, is causing it. And you owe it to yourself to reverse engineer that, find out what it is, because you should eat in such a way that you have plenty of energy and you don't think about food until your next meal. If you feel like you have to snack, you did something wrong. So snacks are a sign of weakness, not something that's going to keep your energy up. You shouldn't need to keep your energy up if you ate right. So number 1, fuel that brain, and that means eating more of the right kinds of fat, and it means not eating bad fat. And that info is widely available. It's all you can get. In fact, you get the Bulletproof diet infographic. I'll give it to you for free. You can text 58885. Text the words BP diet in your email address, and I'll send it to you right now. 58885 BP diet, your email. And you don't have to buy the book. I would like it if you did, but that'll give you the roadmap. Print it, put it on your fridge, and then you're done. That's number 1. Number 2, you got to meditate. And you can meditate in many different ways, but let me tell you the fastest way there is. This will help you go to sleep, and this will help you basically calm down anytime you need to. It's called a box breath. This is what the Special Forces, Navy SEALs kind of people do. So you breathe in for some number of seconds. We'll do it for 5 seconds on each side of the box. So in for 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale slowly for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you can hack it, leave your lungs empty for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you completed a box. Same number on each side. Do 2 or 3 of those. In fact, one of my favorite breaths is in for 20 seconds, hold for 20 seconds, out for 20 seconds. 1 breath a minute. And you'd be amazed what happens when you do that. Your whole body changes and calms down. So some kind of meditation practice. So eat for your brain, meditate to calm your sympathetic nervous system. And the third one, I'm tempted to say sleep, but it's an even more basic hack. And the hack is gratitude. And gratitude turns off that fight or flight response. Every night before bed with my 5 and 7-year-old kids, we do gratitude. And you should do the same thing. Whether or not you have kids, you do it with yourself. And it's, before you go to sleep, name 3 things you're grateful for today. Doesn't matter what they are. And when you do that, it changes your nervous system from the world's out to get me to the world's a good place. And when you do that, you sleep better. And it actually changes genetic expression to tell your body that you're in a safe place. So just name 3 things you're grateful for. And quick example there, I was just thinking of this today. You're late for a meeting, you're driving, and the light turns yellow and you can't run it, so you stop. And you can swear at what an awful place the world is, or you can go, thank God that light changed, because if I would have gone to the next light, a piano would have fallen on my car and killed me. Okay, you have no idea, right? Either one of those stories is true, neither one is actually true. Like, the world isn't out to get you. The light turned red, it wasn't because of you, and you probably didn't have a piano destined to fall on your head, but you're going to tell yourself a story. So pick the grateful story, because the grateful story makes your nervous system behave itself. It causes better genetic expression, and there's studies about that, not just that one thing, but gratitude itself and meditation. So what the heck? There we go. Eat foods that make you kick ass. That would be the Bulletproof diet, my very best effort there for free. I just gave you guys the code. The second thing you would want to do there was to meditate, and the third thing would be to practice gratitude. Those are 3 hacks.
I love it. All right, so we're living in a world that's increasingly more bulletproof, let's say, that meditates more and that expresses more gratitude and lives in that state of kind of coherence that all of those things can lend themselves to. So looking to the future, what do you see as sort of, or what are your thoughts on kind of our future evolution as a species? Where are we heading?
Well, I'm spending a good amount of time with the SpaceX folks, the prize for private exploration of space. I've met the guys planning our mission to Mars. I've held lunar rovers in my hand. They ran over my feet. We are mining asteroids, and we're doing it in a very short period of time. Unbelievable changes are coming from a technology perspective. I'm a firm believer in the abundance model that Peter Diamandis has talked about. That's not to say we haven't like completely screwed up nature, and we better sort of watch that because it'll bite us. It already is. I have a documentary on toxic mold. We created highly aggressive strains of toxic mold accidentally through our agricultural practices that are now moving into our homes and like messing up hundreds of millions of people now. So that this documentary is called Moldy, and it's coming out in a few months. But things like that, okay, we've got to be more responsible for our environment because now we have the tools and technology. I don't mean just what's right here affecting my genes. I mean the environment around us. We have to take ownership of it and help it because otherwise it's not going to help us. So that's part of our evolution as a species, is recognizing that we're part of a complex system. We're also, because of distributed sensor networks, this whole Internet of Things, the ability to know what's going on in our bodies, I am already there from what I see, but it's still not common knowledge that what I do, what I feel affects you. Well, the more data we have, the more sensitive our measurements are, the more we realize that, oh my God, it's way more complex than we thought. But there is an interaction at a non-conscious level between two biological creatures, whether they're dogs or people, it doesn't matter. Like we can show specific cases of it happening now, and they generalize. So given that we're both independent systems, but also interacting multiple systems, it changes a lot. So our evolution as humans requires more consciousness, more awareness of what's going on in our biology and how it affects the world around us. And I believe that we have a lot more power than we're led to believe. And that as we evolve as a species, that we're going to realize that being more mindful is actually a requirement, not just to take care of yourself, but to take care of your community and to take care of the entire planet, and thus maybe also to leave it and go somewhere else like Mars. It sounds kind of cool too.
So you mentioned some technologies there. What would be some of those technologies? I mean, are there technologies coming out that you think can help us better understand and even hack and augment our abilities as an interconnected species? Now that some of those revelations are coming to light, what technologies and innovations do you think are you most excited about with regards to human flourishing? Smartphones.
The mobile phone. Now, I started out the first e-commerce, like the first thing sold over the internet was almost certainly a caffeine t-shirt sold out of my dorm room a long time ago. And I was CTO for one of the wristband companies. I've been working on human monitoring connected to the internet since 2003. And what's happening is that sensors are just becoming effortless and hidden. My mattress has a sensor in it from Bedit. And this thing knows my heart rate variability, the temperature, my respiration, all kinds of crazy things. And it sends them via Ethernet to the cloud. and I can get a report emailed to me every morning that says you slept exactly this much time in deep sleep. It's really cool. And I don't have to do anything. I don't have to touch anything. I don't have to smell. I don't have to click or type. Nothing. It's invisible. Well, okay, that's cool. But when you have 10 million people doing that and all of their data comes together, we just use the cloud and big data, where I've spent the vast majority of my career is working on systems like that, helping to create what's there now. Okay, now we have that. What happens when you take other data and you say, that's funny, now I can tell when 10 million people didn't have a good night's sleep. Maybe it's not random that all 10 million of us didn't sleep well that night. Maybe there's something else. Let's look at things around us. We have no idea what things are affecting 10 million people's sleep because we've never had the ability to look at 10 million people every single night, but we do now. So our knowledge of what affects us as a species can be brought about not by saying, well, this affected just me, but this affected 10 million of us or 100 million of us. And what's going to drive all that data is mobile devices. There's a downside, though. The EMFs from these things, the electromagnetic frequencies, are harmful to our biology. So it's my sincere hope that by acknowledging that there are health risks from Wi-Fi and from mobile devices, then we can hack it. If you deny that there are health risks, then you just keep doing stupid stuff that increases your risk of cancer. And there is a cancer risk that's been shown in multiple studies. Whether or not that's popular, okay, you can argue, okay. The precautionary principle says there's something there. But what if we just re-engineer these to have electromagnetic frequencies that were not harmful or even beneficial for humans? That would be a good idea. And it's certainly not impossible. I have 8 devices in my human hacking facility here that use EMFs to benefit my health, to grow stem cells, to increase nitric oxide. So, like, let's make our own technology support our biology. But in order to do that, we need to see what our biology is doing across a broad number of people. And that's going to drive our evolution.
So what are some of those ways that you can use like a Wi-Fi signal to boost your sense of wellness, your health? How are you doing that?
Well, the Wi-Fi signal itself probably isn't going to do that. In fact, about 6 years ago, I had coffee in Mountain View, California, with one of the guys who has an original patent on Wi-Fi, like the original 802.11. And he'd been spending the last 4 years, this was a while ago, so this was going back 10 years, using $1 million Wi-Fi, like extremely sensitive devices that they use for troubleshooting. He turned them around to point at the human body. And was like, you get this incredible electromagnetic signal, and there's data in the signal, and we can do all these things. Another example of biohacking. So what I do, I have pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices that stimulate nitric oxide. I have a variety of them. I've done some podcasts on Bulletproof Radio with people looking at using EMS for healing. So there's a mat I have here on the floor that in fact, I just got back from a long trip. I was in Florida, New York, and Washington, D.C., kind of bouncing around the U.S. for 10 days. I laid on the thing for an hour, and you can feel it. It increases nitric oxide. And you know that it increases nitric oxide because, well, nitric oxide increases blood flow. And there's a part of the human anatomy that's most sensitive to increases in blood flow. And, well, that's a pretty good signal if you wake up with a kickstand that something happened to your nitric oxide.
We're going to have to link to that post, your post about that, because I'm sure there's plenty of dudes out there who are looking for that right now.
It's too funny, but, not to put it mildly, but yeah, nitric oxide matters. And the fact that an electrical magnetic signal can influence that is interesting. And it can do that because at our core, these little mitochondria that make all of our energy, those things are electrochemical devices. And a lot of the biohacks that I have, even Bulletproof coffee itself, is a mitochondrial hack. It's about getting a new kind of fuel source into these little cells, not even cells, these little organelles inside our cells that make our energy. They usually run on sugar. With Bulletproof coffee, when you use the brain octane oil, they can run on fat. So you get sugar and fat. 2 kinds of fuel, 1 little engine. The Unfair Advantage supplement that I make, it increases the efficiency of this. It's like putting a turbocharger on the engine in your car. So all of a sudden you can burn more. So stuff like that changes your ability to think. And it's kind of radical, but it's awesome.
That is awesome. Okay, so let's wrap up. I want to get a Dave's bulletproof vision of the future. So if you envision a positive potential future for humanity, and what might that look like? In your if you were to project that forward, what would be an optimal future for us?
One of the things that we have to do now is identify the types of foods that make us strong and the other things in food or not that make us weak. And we don't have the capacity on the planet right now to create optimal health for everyone. But we can do that if we identify it right. What we've done is we've basically bought off on this myth that eating a few sticks and some green things with little fat is going to make us strong and vibrant people. The reality is that it makes us infertile and neutered. And my first book was about fertility and epigenetics. I don't say that lightly. Wiley published it. And so we've got to acknowledge what makes people strong and build a world that does that. And that's the future that I'm looking for. And where it really starts, believe it or not, is in our soil. If we don't take care of our soil, which we are rapidly destroying with some aggressive farming practices, things like Roundup, things like genetically modified crops, it's what we can do to the soil because we have genetically modified crops that causes real stress on our ecosystem. That's the foundational element for us. When the soil dies, the animals that feed on the soil are less healthy, and then we feed on the animals and we're less healthy. And over the course of a couple generations, this gets really bad. So the future that I see sees us fixing our soil, sees us fixing our food supply so that it supplies us with optimal nutrition. And when we do that, it's much easier for people to do this one thing. It's called be kind. When you have enough fuel for your prefrontal cortex, the human part of your brain, you can regulate your emotions like an adult, and you can basically stop being a jerk and then feeling bad about it later. Because so many of us do the meanest things because we're lacking energy to be kind. It takes willpower to take the high road instead of the low road. And if you eat so you don't have willpower, you'll take the low road and you'll regret it later and you'll feel guilty about it, and you do that cycle. I don't want us to do that anymore as a species. And that's one of the reasons for Bulletproof coffee. The simplest thing there, give people enough energy. Find the way. It's not like the Tibetans didn't know this. Yak butter tea was the genesis of Bulletproof coffee. This is a 10,000-year-old thing that they drink in Tibet where they were trying to meditate more. But let's make some more things like that for people. That's my future there. People have enough energy to do the right thing, be nice to each other, and have healthy kids.
I like it. And you see the entrepreneurs needing to get involved in kind of ways that we can rescue the soil. And how do you see that kind of, if someone's inspired to, okay, Dave, I want to work to make that change?
I would study permaculture, soil biology, fungal growth. Basically, mycologists are an incredibly important resource for humanity right now to look at this incredible web that grows in our soil. I started a company called Home Biotic, which is making a bacteria you spray around to help basically balance out the fungal problems in people's homes. And I'm looking to grow that company. It's not Bulletproof. It's a separate thing. It's its own entity. And I'm actually even looking for help on that. So people who are interested in that kind of stuff, reach out. It's an amazing time because you can start a company with so little and you can do so much. You can have this enormous reach. And I would say reach out. Think about food quality. Think about how to take real food and make it scalable. There are ways to do it, and it's not the old way of cutting down a forest, burning it, pouring chemicals on the land. That doesn't work, but there are ways.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dave, for your time today. That was a wonderful conversation. I look forward to more in the future.
It was great fun. Thanks, Seth.